Okay, and welcome back to BME 2315. Today we're going to look at a review of some techniques in linear algebra and also talk about how they can be applied to understand biological systems. So far in the class we've been looking at data sets and how algorithms such as peak detection or differentiation can be used to understand that data in more depth. And so that's relevant to the integration, differentiation, and peak detection, and other types of operations that we haven't yet talked about. There's another fundamental way in which matrices or tables of numbers get used in biomedical engineering, and that is in making mathematical models of biological systems. The basic idea is that our system would be represented by a set of systems of equations, and that we can cast that in a matrix form that makes it easier to solve for the unknowns within a system. And so this is the basic principle behind the mathematical or computational modeling for many of the different biomedical engineering labs here at the University of Virginia. So this is an example from Sylvia Blumker's lab, where they're understanding how this open region called the cleft palate, how that affects the mechanics of the mouth. And they are able to create these finite element models of the muscle mechanics, and then also simulate various different types of surgeries in which all of the geometries are represented as vast tables or matrices of information about how the different parts of this muscle system are connected together. Another example of this is in the work of Shane Pierce-Kotler, and they are developing models of blood vessel patterning. And so they're large matrices that determine where the cells go, what are the different rules for their connection, and how do they form vessel patterns. Another example from my own work and research is we create large networks of the protein signals within the cell to look at how signals propagate from a hormone down into the nucleus to affect gene expression. And so in these cases, each of the nodes or proteins in these networks are represented by equations, differential equations, and also in matrices. And finally, there's the work of Jason Papin in our department. They create large-scale models of the molecular metabolism inside your cells. And I like this because they explicitly show in this example the matrices that are used to represent a simple set of reactions right here. So basically, representing biology in mathematical form is a fundamental aspect of biomedical engineering. And so appreciating that, the goals for this section are just to start learning the basics of how matrices are organized, what rules we can apply to them, such as addition, subtraction, multiplication, understand matrix inverses, and also now finally to represent systems as of linear equations in matrix form, so we can get towards mathematical modeling. So at the very basic, we have a matrix right here that is represented, and a matrix has columns. And it has rows. Here's the first row. Okay, and the dimension of a matrix equals the number of rows by the number of columns. Okay, so for example, in this case, this is a 3 by 3 matrix right here. And when we refer to the individual elements, we use this IJ notation, where the first element is the row number and the second element is the column number. Okay, so we can also have vectors. So vectors are when one of the directions is just a size 1, and so this is a 1 by 3 row vector. So row vectors have just their first dimension is 1, and this is down here. This is a column vector. Of size 3 by 1. And we can refer to individual elements like this. So this is the third row, or third row, first column. So we can access it like this. Remember in Python, indexing starts at 0. But in these slides, and when we represent this mathematically, we're starting the indexing from 1. Okay, so you've got a simple matrix like this, and we'll apply these basic principles. You say, what are the dimensions of this matrix? So think about that for yourself. And you see that it's okay. And so this matrix is 3 by 2. This is the rows. This is the columns. And what are the values of the following elements of the matrix? So what is the 2, 1 value? And what is the 1, 2 value? Think about that for yourself for a second. Okay, so this one is -7 because it's the second row, first column. And B12 is the first row, second column. So that's 9. Okay, so that's just the very basics of these matrices. Now let's look at our first matrix operation. So a lot of the times we'll need to transpose various our matrices, and so that's given by a capital T symbol. And so the basic idea is that we're flipping a matrix across the diagonal. And so let me just kind of first draw the diagonal like this, and we say that the transpose, and so we're going to be first looking at the first column, and that's going to become our first row. So 9, 3, minus 8, and then our second column is going to become our second row. We got -1, 2, 7. Okay, and we can also do that for a row vector like this. So BT equals, and then so we got a row vector, then it's going to flip to be a column vector. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and in NumPy, you can do transpose with the transpose function. So we may be needing that later in Python. Okay, so then the next thing we want to do is be able to do various different actions. And the basic idea is that when you multiply or when you add matrices, they do it element by element. So the ij element gets is the ij of A plus the ij of B. And then we also have various different properties. The commutative property says that if you add A and B, that's the same thing as B and A. And we also have an associative property. Basically, these are saying that it doesn't matter what order you do the operation in, including if you have parentheses involved. One important point is that the matrices do need to have the same dimensions in order to add them together. Okay, so now the next thing that we want to be able to do is look at multiplication. So we're going to start by looking at scalar multiplication. And the basic idea here is that if we've got an n by m matrix and an n by m matrix on the right hand side, then we're just going to be multiplying this g value by all of the different elements. And so what that means is we're doing it element by element. Okay, so if g multiplied by this matrix equals g times all the individual elements. So let's look at an example. See if we have 5 times this matrix right here, then that's going to equal 5 times 5, 5 times 9, 5 times -7, 5 times 2, that's still 0, 5 times 3. Okay. And so then that's going to give us 25, 45, -35, 10, 0, and 15. Okay, so that's how we multiply a scalar value times matrix. What if we want to multiply a matrix by a matrix? That's what's called a matrix multiplication. And the basic idea here is that it's a little bit trickier, but we're going to explain how that works. The first thing to notice that in order to do the multiplication, the inner dimensions need to agree. So these are what are called the inner dimensions, n, and then h by m are what are called the outer dimensions. Okay, and it's important that these are the same number. That's why we say h by n and n by m. Okay, so now if we want to multiply these together, the rule is this little formula right here, but let me explain it in a way that might make a little bit more sense to you. We're basically going to be taking, in order to find the 1, 1 value, C1, 1, it's going to be given as the first row in A times the first column in B. And so that's what's going to give us the 1, 1. So we're going to be summing together A row 1 times B column 1. And so if you look at what the individual elements are, I always look at it, I sweep this way and I sweep then down. It's across and then down. So it's A11 times B11 plus A12 times B21. Okay, so then C32 is given by the third row. So A31, let me write this out first, row 3 times the second column. Okay, and so if I look at the individual elements of that, that would be A31 times B12 plus A32 times B22. Right, and so you can kind of match, I always envision it as it's like where they intersect. So it's this with this, that'll give you this point right here.